Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into the world of Deepak Chopra.
Oh, this should be interesting.
It definitely should. We got a ton of requests from you guys to examine him through the lens of the Enneagram.
I can see why. He's a fascinating figure.
Totally. And the consensus from what you sent in is that he's a type 6, specifically the self-preservation subtype.
Ah, the loyalist, focused on security and stability.
Exactly. So we're going to dig into whether that actually holds up.
All right, let's do it.
First things first, for those who might not be as familiar with the Enneagram.
Right, not everyone's obsessed like us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you give us a quick rundown of the self-preservation 6? What are their core motivations and fears?
Well, at their core, they're driven by a need for security. They want to feel safe and protected in a world that often feels unpredictable and chaotic.
That makes sense.
Ah.
So how does that fear of uncertainty play out in their lives?
It can manifest in different ways. They might be drawn to systems and structures that provide a sense of order and predictability.
Like routines, rituals, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Or they might become hyper-focused on potential threats, always trying to anticipate and mitigate risks.
So they're kind of like the ultimate preppers, always planning for the worst-case scenario.
In a way, yes. They're constantly scanning their environment for signs of danger, even if those dangers are more perceived than real.
I can see how that could be both helpful and exhausting.
Definitely. It can make them incredibly resourceful and resilient, but it can also lead to anxiety and a feeling of never truly being able to relax.
So how does this all connect back to Deepak Chopra?
Well, think about his work, his message. It's all about finding peace, creating a sense of harmony, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
Right, he talks a lot about love, unity, transcending fear.
Exactly. And for a self-preservation 6, those concepts can be incredibly appealing. They offer a way to create a sense of safety and security, both internally and externally.
So he's essentially offering a path to overcome those core fears of uncertainty and chaos.
In a sense, yes. He is providing a framework for creating a more predictable and harmonious reality, both for himself and his followers.
But does that mean he's actually a self-preservation 6? Or is this just a convenient interpretation of his work?
That's what we're going to explore. We need to look deeper into his life, his actions, his relationships to see if the patterns really match up.
Right, because actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. So let's dig into some specific examples from the source material you guys sent in.
Yeah, you pulled out some really juicy quotes that seem to reveal a lot about his personality.
They're quite telling.
All right, let's hear them.
All right, let's start with this quote. "The world out there reflects your inner reality. The people you react to most strongly, whether in love or hate, are projections of your inner world."
Ooh, that's a deep one.
Yeah.
What's he getting at here?
It's about how our perceptions of the world are often shaped by our own internal state, our fears, our beliefs, our insecurities.
So it's not necessarily objective reality, but more like our subjective interpretation of it.
Exactly. And for a self-preservation 6, with their heightened sense of threat, this can be especially pronounced.
Meaning they might see danger where others don't.
Right. They might misinterpret a neutral situation as a threat because their mind is primed to look for danger.
So in a way, they're kind of creating their own reality.
To some extent, yes. And that's where the concept of projection comes in.
Right, you mentioned that before. Can you explain what that means?
It's a psychological defense mechanism where we unconsciously attribute our own thoughts, feelings, or impulses onto other people or situations.
So instead of acknowledging those things within ourselves, we project them outwards.
Exactly. And for a self-preservation 6, this can be a way to manage anxiety, to externalize their fears, and make them feel more manageable.
Okay, so how does this play out in Chopra's work?
Well, think about his emphasis on the power of the mind, the idea that our thoughts create our reality.
Right, he talks a lot about manifesting your desires, creating a positive mindset.
Exactly, and that aligns perfectly with the idea of projection. If you believe that the world reflects your inner state, then it makes sense to focus on cultivating a positive internal state.
So in a way, he's encouraging people to project their desired reality onto the world.
You could interpret it that way. And for a self-preservation 6, that can be very appealing. It offers a sense of control, a way to create a safer and more predictable world.
But isn't that a bit of a slippery slope? I mean, what if those projections are based on fear or a distorted view of reality?
That's the potential downside. It can lead to a kind of spiritual bypassing, where you're using spirituality to avoid dealing with real problems or uncomfortable emotions.
So it's not about ignoring the negative, but about acknowledging it and then choosing to focus on the positive.
Right. It's about finding a balance, a way to integrate both the light and shadow aspects of ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got this quote about projection and how our inner world shapes our reality. What else did you find?
There was another quote that really stood out to me. Replace the behavior motivated by fear with the behavior motivated by love. Fear is a product of memory that dwells in the past.
Interesting. So he's acknowledging the role of fear, but suggesting that we can choose a different path.
Right. He's basically saying that we don't have to be ruled by our fears. We can choose to act from a place of love instead.
Easier said than done. Right?
Definitely not easy, but I think that's the essence of his message. It's about shifting our consciousness, our way of being in the world, from fear to love.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Is it just a matter of willpower or positive thinking?
I don't think it's that simple. It's more about cultivating awareness, recognizing when we're operating from a place of fear, and then making a conscious choice to respond differently.
So it's about taking responsibility for our own emotional state and how it's influencing our actions.
Exactly. And that's not always easy, especially for a self-preservation 6 who might be more accustomed to reacting from a place of fear.
Right, because their whole survival strategy is built around anticipating and mitigating threats.
Exactly. So it takes a real shift in mindset to move from that fear-based approach to one that's rooted in love and trust.
So it sounds like Chopra is challenging the self-preservation 6 to step outside their comfort zone, to confront their fears and embrace a new way of being.
Absolutely. And that's a powerful message, not just for type 6s, but for anyone who struggles with anxiety or fear.
You know, it's interesting how these two quotes we've discussed seem to be kind of contradictory. On one hand, he's saying that our reality is a reflection of our inner world, so we should focus on creating a positive internal state. But on the other hand, he's saying that we shouldn't be ruled by fear, that we should choose love instead.
That's a great observation. And it highlights the complexity of human nature and the fact that we're all constantly evolving, trying to reconcile seemingly opposing forces within ourselves.
So it's not about being perfect or always getting it right, but about being aware of those internal struggles and choosing to act from a place of love as often as possible.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's about embracing the journey, the ups and downs, and striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
Okay, we've talked about projection and choosing love over fear. What was that third quote you wanted to discuss?
Oh, right. It's this one. The best way to predict the future is to create it together.
Ah, that's a classic Chopraism. So how does this quote relate to the self-preservation 6?
Well, for a type 6, community is incredibly important. It provides a sense of safety, belonging, and shared purpose.
Right, because they're all about security and stability.
Exactly. And this quote suggests that Chopra sees community as a way to not only face the future, but to actively create it.
So it's not just about finding comfort in numbers, but about working together towards a common goal.
Exactly. And for a self-preservation 6, that can be incredibly empowering. It allows them to feel like they're in control, that they're not just victims of circumstance, but active agents of change.
I can see how that would be appealing. It's like they're pooling their resources, their knowledge, their energy to create a more secure and predictable future.
And that aligns perfectly with Chopra's message of unity and collaboration, the idea that we're all interconnected and that we can achieve more when we work together.
So, is he consciously using his teachings to build a community that provides this sense of security for himself and his followers?
That's hard to say. It could be a conscious strategy or simply an unconscious byproduct of his personality type. Either way, it's effective.
It's definitely created a loyal following. People are drawn to his message of hope and transformation, and the community aspect seems to reinforce that.
It creates a positive feedback loop. The more people feel supported and connected within the community, the more they buy into the message, and the stronger the community becomes.
But isn't there a potential downside to that? I mean, what if those beliefs aren't actually true, or if the community becomes too insular and resistant to outside perspectives?
That's a valid concern, and it highlights the importance of critical thinking even within a supportive community.
Right, we can't just blindly follow any leader or guru, no matter how charismatic they might be.
Exactly. We need to question, to challenge, to think for ourselves. And that can be difficult within a group where conformity is valued.
So it's a delicate balance, finding a community that supports our growth, but also encourages us to think critically and maintain our own individuality.
Absolutely. And that's something that each individual has to navigate for themselves.
Okay, so we've explored Chopra's quotes about projection, choosing love over fear, and creating the future together. What's the overall takeaway from this deep dive into his personality?
I think it's clear that Chopra, like all of us, is a complex individual with both strengths and weaknesses, fears and aspirations. And the Enneagram helps us understand those complexities to see how his personality might be shaping his work and his message.
It's not about judging him or putting him in a box, but about appreciating the nuances of human nature and how our personalities influence our perceptions, our choices, and our interactions with the world.
Exactly. And perhaps the most important takeaway is that self-awareness is key. The more we understand ourselves, our own motivations and fears, the more we can create a life that's aligned with our values and our true purpose.
So even if we don't agree with everything Chopra says or does, we can still learn from his example and use it as an opportunity to reflect on our own beliefs and behaviors.
Absolutely. It's all about using this knowledge as a tool for personal growth and deeper understanding, both of ourselves and of others.
Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to see how the Enneagram can shed light on his work and his message.
And it's not just about Chopra, right? It's about understanding how our own personalities shape our perceptions and our choices.
Absolutely. This is really for everyone listening to take a look inward.
So what are some of the key takeaways you hope people will glean from this conversation?
Well, first and foremost, I hope it encourages self-awareness. The Enneagram is a powerful tool for understanding our own motivations, our fears, our strengths, and our weaknesses.
Right? It's not about judging ourselves or others, but about gaining a deeper understanding of what makes us tick.
Exactly. And that understanding can be incredibly liberating because once we know our patterns, we can start to make more conscious choices.
So instead of just reacting to situations from a place of fear or insecurity, we can choose to respond in a way that's more aligned with our values.
Exactly. And that's where the real transformation happens, both individually and collectively.
You know, one thing that really struck me was how Chopra's message of love and unity, which seemed so positive on the surface, could actually be rooted in a deeper need for security and control.
It's definitely a paradox, and it highlights the fact that even our most positive impulses can be driven by unconscious motivations.
So it's not about judging those motivations, but about being aware of them and how they might be influencing our actions.
Exactly. And that awareness allows us to make more conscious choices, to act from a place of greater understanding and compassion.
So what about Chopra's critics? The people who say he's promoting pseudoscience or misleading his followers. How does the Enneagram help us understand those perspectives?
Well, it reminds us that everyone is coming from their own unique perspective, shaped by their own personality and life experiences.
So someone who's more skeptical or analytical might be less receptive to Chopra's message, even if it resonates with others.
Right. They might see it as naive or overly simplistic, while others find it comforting and inspiring.
It's like we're all wearing different lenses, and those lenses color our perceptions of the world.
Exactly. And the Enneagram helps us recognize those lenses to see how they might be distorting our view or limiting our understanding.
So it's not about saying one perspective is right and the other is wrong, but about appreciating the diversity of human experience and the validity of different viewpoints.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this work so fascinating. It's not about finding easy answers, but about embracing the complexity of human nature and the beauty of our differences.
This has been a truly enlightening deep dive. Any final thoughts for our listeners as they continue to explore the Enneagram and its applications?
Remember that this is just the beginning of the journey. The Enneagram is a lifelong tool for self-discovery and growth.
It's not a destination, but a process of continually learning and evolving.
Exactly. So be curious, be compassionate, and be open to the infinite possibilities that lie within you.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Deepak Chopra and the Enneagram. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. And as always, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep growing.